And right now, we're moving to the next panel session. It is a panel brought to you by the British Embassy and their great, amazing campaign, which invites audiences to see things differently and embrace diverse perspectives. Gamechangers, working towards an equal playing field, focuses on how to foster gender equality and inclusion across all sports. It showcases partnerships, organizations, and people that challenge convention, are thought-provoking, inspirationally ambitious, and celebrate also diversity. Just like our speakers, so we will welcome them on stage with a round of applause. Vamos a recibir ahora en el escenario a los protagonistas, a los moderadores, ponentes del siguiente panel. Antes veremos unas imágenes mientras se van acomodando, pero les recibimos ya. Ellos son Chloe Morgan, Head of She's a Baller, Lola Ogunbote, Head of Women's Football, Burnley FC, Pedro Martinez Losa, Head Coach Women's National Team Scottish FA, and the moderator, Ebru Koksal, Chairwoman in Football. Round of applause for them. Un fuerte aplauso para Chloe Morgan, Lola Ogunbote, Pedro Martinez Losa y también Ebru Koksal. Y mientras se van acomodando, hello everyone, welcome. Meanwhile, our speakers come on stage. Let's enjoy this great campaign. All yours, Ebru. Enjoy. See you later.
Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Game Changers session. And looking at the three of us, you might think that we exchanged messages and brought the same clothes. No, that's not the case. We actually walked in this morning, looked at each other, we're like, oh my God, we're all wearing the same colors, with the exception of Pedro. So we didn't mean to not include you in the party, but you're most welcome to join us.
I was not in the WhatsApp group, so I missed it.
Okay, so we have an amazing lineup of speakers, all of whom have contributed significantly to changing the game for the better. And I will start by asking all of them how football has come a long way, actually, but we still have significant gaps in access to opportunities, pay gaps, visibility, media coverage for women and women's football. So can I start with you, Lola, to ask what are some of the actions, immediate actions that football industry can take in order to make the game more inclusive?
Yeah, I think first of all, just lovely to be here and be on the panel. I can speak from personal and professional experience with what we're doing at Burnley Football Club, and I think one of the things that we're trying to do to advance the game at our level is to make sure that the infrastructure around the players is where it needs to be, and that begins with the staffing that's around it, that begins with the facilities we have access to. We've made changes around how the club is structured, and so we're making sure that the women's team sit under the club to have that support. My vision long term is that we are able to function independently, and I think that happens when there's an appetite for the game, and we have a fan base that is consistent, that puts their hands in their pockets to support the product that we're putting on show. So from a club perspective, those are the few things that I think that are quick wins to allow us to kind of progress the game to a stage where it is sustainable. I think there's a whole other question around what sustainable means, but for us in our small world in Burnley, those are the things that we're doing immediately.
Thank you. And Chloe, from your perspective as an ex-professional player and also someone who's trying to change the game for the better, what are some immediate actions that football can take for inclusivity?
I think from my perspective, obviously having sort of played, so I was with Arsenal, Crystal Palace and Spurs, and I think You know, when you look at kind of the groups of women that have gone, you know, in those teams, I mean, when I first started at Spurs, this was many, many moons ago, and we had doctors, paramedics, we had managers, also competing at, you know, a professional level as well. And thankfully, the game has changed, that people can now just focus on their football careers. But you look at the expertise and experience of those women sort of being in a professional space and also on the pitch as well. And some of the ideas that they were coming up with in terms of, you know, making improvements at the club, you know, raising the standards at the club. You know, I think there needs to be sort of more of a focus on what the athletes themselves can really deliver in those clubs, because they are an absolute goldmine of talent and passion. I mean, some of the players now, you're sort of starting to see with the clubs that they're starting to utilise those players post-career. So you're starting to have those conversations with the players who are thinking about either retiring or going into something different. And the clubs are saying, well, actually, can we upskill you? Can you start working in our commercial department for a little bit? Can you work with our marketing, our PR teams, our, you know, kit design, things like that? So I think that's, where the real talent lies. You've got this, you know, 22, 25 players on a squad with all this experience and knowledge. And I think, yeah, for me, it would be more about the clubs utilising some of that talent, keeping it in-house, because these women are absolutely incredible role models sort of on and off the field. And I think that naturally then will gravitate to kind of more senior positions and then into boardroom. And I think obviously it's you know, it's a well-versed rhetoric that the more diverse the boardroom is, the better the decisions. So I'd love to see more players kind of making that step into the professional settings in their clubs for the next few years.
It's a natural progression, as you're saying, and a captive workforce that are passionate about women's football and also are loyal to the club as well. So, good idea. And Pedro, as a champion of women's football who's worked across 5 countries actually, what do you see as some of the quick wins that the industry can act upon?
Well, first, thank you for inviting me to this panel. It's a privilege for me to be with Lola and Chloe and yourself here, and it's a privilege for me to be in Sevilla, obviously, as a Spanish. And probably I'm one of these examples of inspiration of a young coach in Madrid who never thought I was going to be in a panel or coaching the Scottish national team. So for me, obviously, I have gone through the whole process of developing the women's game in different paces in different countries. It is about equality, but also it is about something bigger than that. It is about the generation of girls that we are educating now, and the world that we are building now, and how we all want our daughters, our sisters, and all the women around different business, not just sport, to have the opportunities to develop and to maximize. Obviously, sport can be an example of that, but we have many examples on society. It's about educating society. It's about still the micro bias every single day to face that we all face all the time, and it's about putting a product there that investors and brands are going to believe in it. So I can speak with passion about it because that has been my career, as well as Chloe and Lola. But the women's game has developed incredible professionals because we have gone through a lot of challenges and phases, and now we are in a good moment of probably take off. I think for me, immediate actions will be about equal pay of players and coaches, and it can look like difficult, but it's not really. It's about investment. It's about a successful case that we have on the table already. It's about involving and creating the right synergies. It's about working on grassroots participation, so no girl is not having access to football, and that still happens today in many scenarios that we could provide examples. And it's also about visibility. Events like today give us that opportunity to speak, but also visibility, the constant visibility with media, how we present the women's game, how we present the athletes, and how we build the whole brand around the women's game.
Yeah, and I think you've touched upon a very important point, something we hear all the time. Women's game is always under-resourced, and it trickles down all the way in the pyramid of whether it's the players, whether it's the coaches, whether it's the referees. They're doing the same job, they're working as hard, but they're not getting even proportionately equitable payments. So I think it's a very important topic for sure. So back to Chloe, you've also been a big advocate of LGBTQ plus rights and inclusivity in football. What are some of the most pressing barriers to achieving true equality on and off the pitch? Because you've been both on the pitch and now you are actually trying to progress in the professional world of football as well.
Yeah, I think, I mean, being a member of the LGBTQ plus community myself, I think I've been quite fortunate, I think, to find a space in sports that has been quite accepting and generally quite welcoming. I think in women's sports, naturally, when I've been on teams, I've been around, colleagues, teammates, professionals who have been in the same community as well. So I've always kind of felt that sense of, welcomeness, I suppose, and that, that real friendliness with teammates and colleagues. But I think what we'd like to do is kind of see that continue. I think there's a real fear, I suppose, that, as the game sort of grows in terms of attention, that we kind of lose that special place for the LGBTQ plus community. So I think for myself as, being a part of She's a Baller, like one of the things that we're trying to do specifically is to kind of, tell more of those stories, make sure that community is still represented, that they still feel safe in those spaces. And we're just about to sort of launch a SAB Insights report today, sort of talking about the experiences of LGBTQ plus communities, not just in the women's space, but also in the men's space. And I think one of the stark sort of insights to come out of the report was how little the LGBTQ plus community really feels safe in men's spaces, and how greatly comforted they feel in kind of women's spaces. So I think there's still a lot of work to be done in terms of disparity between the men's game and the women's game in making people feel more comfortable in those spaces. And I know there is obviously a lot of work going on with clubs around sort of campaigns and Football Pride, LGBTQ plus History Month, but I mean those activations need to be happening throughout the year to make sure that we all sort of pay attention to and focus on those problems throughout the entire year. And in terms of being a mixed race woman in football, that has been obviously there's a separate side, I suppose, in terms of kind of diversity that you see on the field and in the boardrooms. I think the clubs that I've played at, generally speaking, diversity was much greater 10, 15 years ago when I first started playing to what it is now. And again, I think a lot of that is down to maybe sort of the accessibility sometimes of these spaces, not having, role models from different backgrounds who are kind of heroed in the mainstream media. And again, that's sort of one of the things that we're sort of working on at the moment, especially sort of focusing on the academy pathways. How can we bring to life some of the experiences of black and mixed race women, South Asian girls as well, sort of coming through the pathways, to start saying to people and to young girls coming up that there are people who are making a real difference. Yeah. We spoke to an absolutely incredibly inspiring young woman, 14, at Wolves Academy at the moment, South Asian and Muslim background, and she'd been doing wonders in sort of working with the PFA to increase their visibility and the scheduling around Ramadan. And you think, 14 years old, working with the PFA, so those kind of stories are things that we're trying to now bring to life because there's incredible work going on from people in these communities.
Yeah, I think the importance of making sure that efforts are being taken at all levels of the pyramid by all the organizations, that's the only way, hopefully, to tackle the issues we have right now. So, Lola, from the perspective of a club that's been in the Premier League now, back down to Championship with foreign owners who come from finance background, you do as well, so do I. You've been actually working in different parts of the football operations, and what do you see as some of the important approaches that the clubs can take in order to help both players on the pitch as well as professionals developing in the game to take up more decision-making roles? Yeah. What role can the clubs play to promote better diversity and inclusion?
Yeah, I think to Chloe's point, I think the more represented we are at the top, the better the decision-making process can be, because naturally we are taking in views from people that we might not ordinarily have considered. And I think one of the things that was very apparent in Burnley, just because of where it's based in the country and just as an organisation, was a lack of diversity. And I think what's been great for the club is making sure that they're championing their females within the organisation. And personally, I'm an advocate of putting the right person in the right place, irrespective of what their protected characteristics are. But I'm also a champion of giving people opportunities that wouldn't ordinarily have them. And I think I've been a benefit of that, quite frankly. When I looked through the pyramid at the time that I was appointed, there was only one other black female from tier 1 to 9 that was a head of women's football in the whole of the pyramid. And so, I look at that and I think to myself, well, why is that? There must be more people that are competent, that are smart enough to get into these positions. And I think in my case, it took somebody to take a risk, and that's exactly how I would describe it. Not because I don't think I'm competent, but because it wasn't the done thing. And I think that risk, confidently, in my view, has paid off really well in terms of what I've been able to contribute in the short amount of time that I've been at Burnley Football Club. And so my challenge, I guess, and invitation to anyone in this room that is in a decision-making process is to challenge your own bias and think outside the box and try and understand how you might diversify your teams, your boards. And that's something I've even done from a player perspective. We've been able to have housing, and that was something I petitioned for so that I could spread my recruitment process. And we've had, kids from inner cities of London. We've had a girl flying from Ireland, from France, just because I'm now able to house them. And that was something that I was very deliberate about, because I wanted to make sure that our team was representative of the demographics of our area. And it is largely white, but we hosted a game at the main stadium just 2 weeks ago. And we had a mixed race, biracial girl who came up to us and said that a particular player, Anna Gray, was her favourite player. Now, Anna Gray's been signed at the club for 2 weeks, and she is of also a biracial background. And I asked her, I said, well, why Anna Gray? And she said, because Anna Gray looks like me. And I think in that moment, it really just hit home into how important it is, if you can see it, to be it. And I don't take my position lightly, and I try to open doors where I can in the same way that doors were open for me.
Yeah. I guess let's talk for a second. I'm going off script, but we talk about obviously football industry, but the industry we came from, finance, was not necessarily doing a great job about inclusivity either.
No.
Do you ever make a comparison in your mind, or do you ever regret your decision to come into football, where you had a very high-flying job in a top-level investment bank?
Yeah, I don't believe in having regrets. I think it's around learning. I thought naively that I'd be working less hours in football than I would be in investment banking, but that isn't the case. I do believe that the reason I am in this position is because of my background, and I'm able to bring, again, when we talk about diversity, this is not just about race, but a diversity in thought.
Yes.
I'm able to approach my work in a very different way to people in the industry, just because my background is different. And so I'm thankful that I had the opportunity to have that career and transition. And I'm even more thankful that I'm able to live out my passion, which is football, and earn from it, because a lot of us have passions that might not be able to feed us. So it's a great intersection where I'm able to lead on strategies, to think about player contracts, things that I was doing before, and have that crossover in football. So it's been no regrets, but definitely a well-worth journey, worth taking.
That's great. We love to have you in football. And we're very glad that you ran into Rachel Yankee in the elevator, who changed your mind about coming into football.
For
Wonderful.
Sure, for sure.
Pedro, your work with the Scottish FA obviously is making big difference. And tell us a little bit about what the Scottish FA is doing in order to level the playing field for women's football. And just for the audience, I actually served as a member of the Equality and Diversity Advisory Board of the Scottish FA a couple of years ago. And for sure, they have very progressive thinking, and they mean it when they want to level the playing field. So tell us a little bit about state of affairs in Scotland.
My first learning every time I go to a new culture, a new country, is about making an analysis of the contest that you're going to fight. Embrace the culture, embrace the strengths, and identify weaknesses, especially the one that you can affect directly, because you cannot fight against the whole world. At the Scottish FA, we have a strategic plan for 5 years that is finishing now in 2025, based on 6 pillars. These 6 pillars are based on points about professionalism of the game, success with the national teams, inspiring generation and improving attendance, but also visibility, also revenue. So it's covering the whole spectrum of the women's game. The one I can affect directly is the one I'm obviously focused on with my expertise, which is the success of the national team. And as a consequence of that, obviously inspiring the nation, which I think is big enough. I think these challenges in the women's game and these objectives are big enough to really be excited all the time about it, and when you have the capability to inspire all the girls in the country, but not just the girls, it's just the whole nation. There has been some actions related to that. Obviously, grassroots football is very important in a country with 6 regions. That we need to make sure that all the girls have access to football, and that was not the case in the past. We may have areas where there is a lot of facilities and resources, but there are other areas where maybe a girl couldn't even play. So we have been covering that with new programs, with grassroots program, investing on that one, and also creating the next generation program, detecting the talent, training the talent, and providing no resources to the players, but also resources to the coaches, providing them experience. We are lacking of female coaches who are really prepared to give the next step, and we want to promote that, and we want to invest on that. And I think this is a big aspect, not only about coaches, but it's about empowering women in all the positions in the associations, in the organization, and for them to be prepared to take all these responsibilities, as the examples that we have here and many others. So that's pretty much the job of, it's a long-term job, it's not perfect all the time, but I think it's critical to plan strategically. I think that my learning process with FIFA also through the mentorship program is planning strategically is key, understanding your needs, understanding where you are, and that gives you a sense of proving what you're doing, providing evidence when you are successful. Also, you can review quickly where you have not been that good, and then there's never a successful pathway that it goes positive all the time. You have to go through the different ups and downs, and I can provide many examples in different countries about that, but what matters is that energy that can be transmitted, can be infectious or contagious to develop the girls. And I think we want a girl to feel there is a pathway, there is opportunities. You want to dream to play in the national team as an ultimate objective, but also you can use that one for life. I think sports is about values, it's about ethics, it's about community, it's about what you get from sport for your life. And we have the example of Chloe, who was playing for many years, and that's another step of her career. And that's what should be, those opportunities for all the players and for all women, apart from develop their maximum potential when they are athletes in the game.
Yeah. And would you agree that women's football space is more collaborative, let's say? There is competition, obviously, on the pitch, but I think the clubs, the federations, the leagues are more willing to share experiences and good ideas and good practices with each other, because we understand the need to elevate the game as a whole. It doesn't help if one country is excelling or one club is really going off, because we have to make sure that the industry as a whole on the women's game grows. So what other federations can learn from Scottish FA, do you think, from how they're approaching the game?
Well, I think probably we all can learn from all of us at the same time, but I think that the strategic plan and the mechanism of review and building in my area mainly develop the success for the national teams through developing the right leadership with the players, making the players lead by example, and leading the whole culture, which are the ones who have more experience on this one. And my role as a national team coach is just to facilitate those spaces to create this high performance culture, which has not been very usual in the women's game, sadly, before, but now it's happening, and provide the best professionals with the highest competences, so the players around can benefit from that. So that is the best way that consistently we can guarantee the success. And apart from that, from the top of the pyramid, we can provide this one as an inspiration, as an example for the other programs. I think that it's true that there is an intention to cooperate, but also it's true that we come from very low levels in some aspects of investment, resources. So not because there is some investment now is enough. I think we still have to reach and accelerate certain levels of perception, awareness, and provide more opportunities that we have now.
Yeah. So, Chloe, back to you. I guess, you have two colleagues here who are in positions of power, and you and I are actually technically outsiders who are trying to change the industry through initiatives and campaigns. And it's not always as easy, but tell us a little bit more about She's a Baller. Like, why did you come up with this, and what do you want to achieve with it? And how would initiatives like that help challenge the status quo and bring about change?
Yeah, so I can't take too much credit. I've only been with the company now for about 4 months or so, and it's been a big sort of transitional period for us, kind of looking at what was working really well, what wasn't, and kind of coming up with a new strategy. So just kind of give everyone sort of a bit of an idea about who we are. So we're a women's football social media platform existing on Instagram, TikTok, and we just launched a website last week housing articles and jobs in the women's football space. And then the second part of the business is brand partnerships. So we work with Nike, Puma, EA, Sports, eBay, sort of activation campaigns and kind of helping them tell the stories essentially to try and make sure that the campaigns they have land really authentically in the space. So yeah, we're now the largest UK women's football platform, which we're super, super proud of. But again, I've been here 4 months, so I'd completely defer all the success to my incredible team who have kind of built it. But for us, I think essentially the importance of having spaces online, particularly where you can kind of tell those incredible stories. We're also a platform for grassroots teams and players as well. So we have campaigns like Baller of the Week, where we have anyone from aged 5 to 90 who can submit clips and profile and platform the kind of things that they're doing in the spaces. We're just about to launch an academy baller series called Future FC, where we're working with 7 clubs across the WSL and Women's Championship. We've gone out to interview these players at various locations around the country to speak to them and their parents about the support network, what academy life really looks like, the resources involved in academy life, what it's like for a 14-year-old being away from home for 2 weeks at a time, the pressures of social media. Some of these girls are also part of the England camp, so juggling school and education, and some of them are actors as well. Some of them are doing incredible work with the PFA. So for us, it's mainly about sort of, really tracking those journeys. So we're looking to work with those young women sort of from now for the next 5 years to see how their kind of journeys develop. And it's going to be particularly exciting because it's such a real piece of work. So, we're not particularly fussed on how their journeys might look. Some of them might drop out of football, fall out of love with it. Some of them might go into completely different careers or go into boards or go into the England setup or might have injuries. And we just want to show, the world essentially that there are so many different pathways that young people are now taking and how challenging it can be, but how incredible these young women really are. So it's been a beautiful part of the experience to kind of really focus on some of those original content series. And as well as kind of profiling, obviously, what happens at elite level as well. So we've got our YouTube channel dropping next week with a big interview from a top level player, kind of doing a deep dive on, what it's like being in sort of highly pressurized mainstream environment and what it's like for your privacy and your private life and how you manage that and being a big name brand and, what retirement looks like. So that's the thing that really excites me about the social media platform is being able to do that, but then also work with brands as well. So yeah, it's been a whirlwind 4 months. I am sleeping. I'm just about getting back to sleeping and eating again. So, but that's the nature of football, isn't it? You work all hours because you're just so passionate and you genuinely love what you do. So, it's been amazing.
So storytelling for providing visibility.
Absolutely.
That's a very important enabler in the change process. What about legal profession? Are you ever going to go back?
No.
Okay.
I absolutely loved being a lawyer. I think, so I was I was in civil litigation, and there's a lot of, it's a really cheesy word, transferable skills that you take from the legal profession into, a lot of, in football, you negotiate all the time, there's a lot of teamwork, there's a lot of, late hours, deadlines, you've got to do a lot of sort of like documentation. So those kind of things I've kind of transferred into my career now. But no, I think my passion's always been women's football, so I'm really excited to kind of finally be in the space full time and focusing my energy there because there's so many lawyers. I mean, they don't need another one.
There's one sitting next to you as well, who flipped into football also. Lola, so from your perspective, having worked at the top level in the UK, among the Premier League clubs and now Championship clubs, what do you think are some of the effective strategies that the clubs can employ in order to, forge pathways for women in the game? And whether it's in the playing career or as Chloe was saying earlier, transitioning from playing into positions in football, but also ensuring there are clear opportunities for advancement in the game, because we are unfortunately witnessing a lot the grass ceiling in the game, and a lot of women are stopped at a certain level and are not able to progress. So what can be some effective strategies and programs in order to advance women? And feel free to speak about our leadership course at Women in Football, which you are an alumni of.
Of course, I think I'll begin with Burnley. I think one of the things that we've just launched is a program called The Hive, and what that does is it gives anyone, irrespective of whether you have qualifications, the opportunity to get an insight into what it's like to work in a football club. And so we've done this over 3 seasons, and from that cohort we've been able to make hires of people into the club. So it's a unconventional route into the game. It's a product that allows people with no skills to pair up with people that are in the business, who know the work, back to front, and gives them exposure for a season long, and afterwards, they would go through just the same as any other interview process, but of course, with that insight and intel, puts them in a position. So I think organizations have a responsibility to look at what they can be doing to proactively create spaces for women. I know in terms of the FA, there are courses, coaching courses that are designed specifically for women to increase that. Funding for underrepresented groups, to encourage them to get onto licenses and coaching badges, etc. And so these are things that are happening, and there are organizations that need to get on board to make sure that they also can be seen as somebody that's leading the way in creating more spaces for women. In terms of my own development, I knew coming into the football space that I would need some type of credits in the sense of, I was coming in from law, and that's great, but I didn't actually have any experience in the game. And so when I was looking around courses, I was thinking about doing an MBA or a master's, and I came across the Women in Football Leadership course. And to be quite frank, I think that in itself, in terms of what it offered in a safe space for women to focus on the challenges that are unique to us, especially in this space, and to be able to speak with leaders that are experienced on the course, and Ebru was on the course, on my course, and to share those insights and how you present yourself, how do you network, what does that actually look like, what are the tangible takeaways, and I think that was a great introduction for me, who was early on in my leadership career. And I think that these are the type of things that organizations should be linking up with to get those bursary places, to encourage women in their organization to take on leadership courses that won't be a huge financial investment on their side. And I also think there's a responsibility to mentor, and I think I personally have taken that role quite seriously, and if I have women in the organization who want to engage and want to have those conversations on what it's like to work. And I had just recently a female colleague call me about a situation at work, and she wanted to understand how she should best approach her line manager. And putting yourself out there as somebody that can support your own colleagues, male or female, in the space, I think is really, really effective. That peer-to-peer relationship, when you know somebody, I think goes far deeper than the courses you can attend, etc. So if you are in a situation or privileged enough to be in a position of leadership, I think there's an onus and responsibility on you to reach down and say, how can I help, and how can I contribute to this beautiful game, and trying to make sure that we all have the same access and equitable rights to contribute to the game that we all love so much.
Thank you. Pedro, a slightly different topic for you. Let's talk about grassroots a little bit. What are some important steps that the Scottish FA is taking in terms of improving the standards in grassroots so that it's ensuring sustainable growth of women's football at the professional level and at the national team level?
Well, sometimes obviously simplicity is the easiest way. I think there's 3 factors very important and obvious, which is investing in access to facilities and good programs, investing in the coaches, in the quality of the coaches, and investing in the visibility of those programs, so every player who wants to have access to the game have the opportunity. There's also a responsibility to create these clear pathways and pathways for everyone, because we need to create programs for all these levels of the game. We are thinking about the elite, but the elite probably are not even 1% of the players. But we need to increase transversally the participation and the amount of programs, so then as a product of that, we can multiply the potential talent and we can transform the talent in performance in the future.
Of course, that's a great approach. So, as we're slowly closing, let's talk for a second about the importance of external players in creating change in the game. Like, as we were walking in, we saw the wonderful campaign of the British Embassy. Great. So, what role can sponsors, brands, and organizations like British Embassy and these types of campaigns play in promoting change and achieving change? So, let's start with you, Pedro.
Well, I think there is a moment of, I think there's a clear evidence of where the game is going. We don't have homogeneous levels, but we have highlights of the FIFA World Cup in Australia, what's happening in England with the professional league. So I think we have to take a look and really, as a brand, find, is this something that I can find my synergy? I will invite investors and brands to get involved, because it's the moment now. Maybe in a few years' time it's too late or too expensive. We have cases now proven the evidence of the revenue that can come back if it's invested properly and run properly, planned strategically, with involving the best professionals around, which there are a lot, and believing in what you are doing. I think there's an element, financially or not, it's a human element of really believing on that and not just doing something to tick the box because of equality. It's about believing that this is going to be a brand that is going to have a revenue, and I think we can provide plenty of examples of that, but it's about how we present. There is financially now a lot of evidence about successful cases that can present to investors and big brands. Big brands are getting involved now. It's not just about the smallest brands that used to be like charity. We used to see this one as charity. This is not charity. This is a product very powerful that is it's not going to stop, and it's going to come along in the next year. So I think this is a great moment now to find what is your synergy as a brand to cooperate here.
Thank you. Well, the train has left the station. If you hurry and run, you can still catch the train of women's football. Chloe, for you, what is the role that campaigns like GREAT can play in promoting change?
Well, I think, our Insights report has shown that, the vast majority of women's football fans, feel really favourably towards brands that do really activate in the women's space. And I think it's not just activation that's centred around, major tournaments, it's activation that's very consistent throughout the year to kind of, promote this kind of, we're in it for the long run. We're not just in it for the hype and the attention. It's that kind of consistent, genuine, relationship, I suppose, with women's football. But there's so many different ways that, brand partnership can help. It's not just, having Alessia Russo or Leah Williamson on the front cover of magazines. It's actually, okay, well, can we buy pitch spaces for this grassroots community? Can we actually help just providing, kit, balls, coaches in these particular areas? Can we, help fight back against some of like the sort of male corporate bookings that exist in the grassroots community space? Or can we provide, more access and facilities for, disability women's football? So there's so many different ways that brands can activate I think the women's football space is one of those spaces that's really thinking outside the box in terms of like what we can actually do practically in real life terms to make a change. So it's a really exciting time to kind of be a part of women's football, and I'm really excited that I'm a part of it too. So watch this space.
Excellent. And Lola, last but not least, the campaign invites audiences to see things differently. So from that perspective, how do you view the importance of these kinds of partnerships with non-football organizations?
Yeah, I think that's the key, is to see things differently. And when we talk about investment, and you understand the genesis of the word, it's not going to be a quick return. It's something that you need to do consistently over a period of time to yield that return later on. And I think that has to be the case here in women's football. I know with Burnley, we were trying to think outside the box in that sense with our partnership with TikTok, and we were able to live stream our games across a TikTok platform, and within the first year we reached 1 million unique views, and there's no way that we're ever hosting 1 million people in a stadium in Burnley, but we're able to bring that game to 1 million people. And I think these are some of the ways that we can think outside of the box and do things differently, particularly in the women's game space, which at the moment is a lot more open and a lot more flexible to unconventional ways of working. The future will dictate whether that changes, but for now, while we're in this space and whilst the game is a lot more open to new ideas and innovative ways of working, I think it would be crazy not to try and think about ways to do that. And this isn't just about give me £1 million or give me 500,000. To Chloe's point, it's, you know, what other things can we do off pitch? Can we be an organisation that funds women to go on leadership courses? Can we be an organisation that helps with kit and with pitch space and with coaches and with food? Are there organisations that have the intel? We had a computer literacy provider come in and do some training with our players to make sure that post the footballing life, they have some tools and essential skills that can help them to progress, irrespective of where they end up. They will need those skills. And so there is just so many touch points and different ways that we can think about supporting the game. Finances obviously are important, and we're never going to say no to money, but also there are the softer skills, if I can put it that way, that we can empower our women with, whether they're playing, whether they're in decision makers, to help the game and promote the game to be a better place. And I'm convinced that there's something that we can all do to contribute, whether that's with our time or resources, to create a game that everybody loves.
Thank you. We only have 1 minute left, so please tell me one skill that a game changer should possess as advice to young people who also want to challenge the status quo and make change. Pedro, one skill.
For me, it's believe in yourself and don't accept the status quo or what is established already. I said just to encourage everybody to get out of the box and be creative and build things in a creative way and in a positive way for the development of the game.
Chloe, one skill.
I'd say patience. I think change takes time, and I think a lot of people are in different spaces in terms of their career, where they want to go, their ambitions, what they're able to achieve. So I think, you know, having that real kind of respect for where everyone is on their journey, and I think, yeah, the change is going to take time. So, yeah, being chill with that.
Yes,
yeah.
definitely, but steady. And for you, Lola?
I think I'm going to go probably the other way, in the sense of not necessarily a skill, but just an attribute, is to be relentless. I think, to Chloe's point, things do take time, and there are people in different spaces on their journey, and we have to be respectful of that. But I think there's also, for me personally, a sense of relentlessness to not accept no, to not accept that it can't be done, to not accept that there is an excuse. People don't want to watch women's football, people don't want to come to the game. That's not necessarily the case, and to be relentless in your commitment and your resolution to try and to enhance the game and where it's at. And I know for a fact, if I didn't possess that quality, I wouldn't be where I am today. So many people told me I couldn't, I shouldn't, it couldn't happen, you can't earn money in football, but here we are. And so it is with that dogged relentlessness and annoyance to some people, I am sure, that change comes about.
So never think the challenge is too big to tackle and there isn't anything you can do. There is something each and every one of us can do, and we have managed to finish on time. Please give us a round of applause for our wonderful panelists, and thank you for being with us today.